afternoon. It is once again Friday at 5:30 in the p.m. And this is your host for the next, 50 minutes, quite frankly, today, of listening to you, the people. The most interactive television show in Chicago, where you, the listener, really dictates the action. You guide the conversation. I thank you. We have a guest in the studio with us this afternoon, and we're going to go to her in a minute. But before we do, I want to mention three things. First of all, this is Veterans Day, a day that we celebrate in honor of the men and women who have been a part of our military ever since there has been a military. Just in case you didn't know it, the first person recorded as being killed during the Revolutionary War was an African American, Crispus Attucks, who even then was fighting to protect the country. And then right down the line, in every war that we have fought, there have been heroic stories of African Americans. Some of what happened to African Americans in the military was not so pleasant. As a matter of fact, much of it wasn't. During the Civil War, there was a massacre of African American soldiers in a battle that the Southerners won. But they didn't just win, they massacred the African American soldiers who were fighting with the North. And then, of course, there were African Americans who fought in the Spanish-American War. There were African American, the Buffalo Soldiers. There were African American soldiers who fought in the Indian Wars. And so African Americans in World War I, World War II, the conflict in Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, all the way up to now, there are African American men and women who are given the last full measure of devotion, who are given their lives. And so we salute you, our veterans, who have given the last that you had to give. When you give your life, there's nothing else. And so we pause on this day to honor our veterans. We also pause to raise the issue that our country is not treating our veterans like we ought to be. I was over at the Jesse Brown Medical Center last Thanksgiving. And there were hundreds of veterans there to get a free turkey in line. Homeless veterans who had no place to live and no place to go. Not much has changed. There are still thousands of homeless veterans who don't have housing, who are living in shelters under viaducts and in old abandoned cars, or wherever they can get. So we ought to be able to do better. And I pledge to work as hard as I can where I work and what I do to try and make sure that this United States of America treats our veterans as we should. I ran across this piece some time ago that I just really liked. It was written by Mr. Charles Province, who was in the Army. And he wrote and said, it is the soldier, not the minister, who has given us freedom of religion. It is the soldier, not the reporter, who has given us freedom of the press. It is the soldier, not the poet, who has given us freedom of speech. It is the soldier, not the campus organizer, who has given us freedom to protest. It is the soldier, not the lawyer, who has given us the right to a fair trial. It is the soldier, not the politician, who has given us the right to vote. It is the soldier who salutes the flag, who serves beneath the flag, and whose coffin is draped by the flag, who allows the protester to burn the flag. It's the soldier. And I don't think that you can have a better depiction of what it means to be a soldier than this piece. That's why when I leave here, I'm going to go over to 5730 West Division Street, where we are honoring soldiers. Our two principal honorees, well, all of them are principal, but we are honoring William Beal Dale, who used to spend as much time with me as his time would allow when he was available and well, and took photographs of everything that we ran into. So we thank you, Beal Dale. It is Babette Payton, who, despite the fact that she has what would be called a disability, but I see her at more meetings and activities, and she used to actually have an elevator company that she developed as a minority businesswoman, and she repaired elevators. But she is the epitome of what it means to be disabled in some ways, but far more capable and more able than many people in other ways. Two other outstanding businessmen we honor: Mac Alexander, the owner of MacArthur's restaurant, and you go there on Sunday afternoons and you're standing outside to get in. You can even go there for breakfast in the morning, and you have to stand in line to get up to place your order. But more than that, Mac contributes to everything that goes on, especially in the Austin community, but surrounding the Austin community and in the community of Chicago and the western suburbs. He and his wife have been absolute role models for as long as I can remember. And Mr. Garfield Major, who at one time had one of the largest exterminating and janitorial services in the Chicagoland area, outstanding benefactor, great businessman, and for the last 40 years or so has been producing and paying for his own radio show where people can call in. He can still be heard on Sunday nights at 10 o'clock on 1450 AM WRLL, 1450 AM. We will be honoring all of those individuals as soon as I get out to 5730 West Division Street. Now we have in the studio, you've heard me talk a lot about the fact that our world is becoming smaller all the time. and the things we may have never thought we could possibly do years ago. People are doing them without impunity now. In the studio with me is Miss Tiama Romero, who is a member of my staff and is our senior advisor. She just returned last night from a trip to China, sponsored by the United States State Department. And in spite of the fact that we've had difficulty at times and difficult relationships and all of that with China, China is opening up, has opened its doors. And China has made tremendous movement across the world. It's hard to pick up an item in many places and not see made in China in it. So welcome, Ms. Romero.
Thank you.
We're glad that you got back safely,
Definitely.
that it was a long trip, I'm sure. So why don't you tell us about it before I ask you some direct things?
Well, the China trip was pretty amazing. We left on October 30th and we returned last night. It takes about 2 days, a day and a half, to travel to China from Chicago to San Francisco, and then from San Francisco to Beijing. And as we started our trip in Beijing, we ended our trip in Beijing. In between those 2 days, we traveled to 2 other cities. We traveled to Yayan, and Gaiying. Gaiyang has a population of 8 million people,
8 million people.
which is about almost 3 times that of
And
Chicago.
so that's not really one of the major
No.
cities in China, is it?
No,
All right.
Beijing is one of the major cities. It's the capital, and Shanghai.
How many people in Beijing?
About 25 million people.
25 million people in that one city?
Hmm.
And in the next city you say that you visited?
About 4 or 5 million.
4 or 5 million. Small town.
Small towns.
Yeah, it's like the difference between Chicago and Springfield. maybe.
Absolutely, it is. But it's in reverse. Beijing has a large number of people, and that's the capital.
All right, so Beijing is the capital.
Yes.
That
And
seems like a lot of folks.
it was amazing to see the people and the traffic. You think we have traffic jams here? You, you should see it in Beijing. Not only car traffic, but people traffic. The people try to outrun the cars on the highways. We actually, believe it or not, we actually were successful in going to this Walmart in Beijing. We really wanted to visit a Walmart because we couldn't quite believe that there was a Walmart in Beijing. There was a Walmart, but there was also a Walmart. We had to run across one street. Traffic kept coming both ways. Then we had to run across another street. Traffic, 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 and people. If people here, cars here, and both trying to go this direction. That's what I found amazing in terms of traffic. Yeah, the people are just as aggressive, honestly, as the cars trying to get from one place to another.
Well, let me ask you this question. When we think about the world, one of the countries that has made tremendous progress in the last 2 or 3 decades relative to development of a middle class, or what is called a middle class, based upon what you saw and what you may have been told, what was the purpose of this trip, and how has China moved? I remember hearing about the barefoot doctors and the rural areas of China But what would you say attributed or contributed to the evolution and development of this larger increase in development of a middle class population in China?
Well, I'm glad you put it that way because there are things that we were told, and of course, there are things that we saw. About 14 other congressional districts from around the country journeyed to travel to China with me from places like Arizona. We had staff from Arizona, we had staff from Texas, we had staff from Arkansas, Maryland, California, Alabama, Vermont, Pennsylvania. We had a staffer from the Congressional Research Service with us, and we also had an expert that helped to interpret some of the information that we were receiving in real time.
And I would imagine you had Democrats and
By-
Republicans.
Most of the folks there were Republican, but I would say 60-40, 60% Republican, 40% Democrat.
Most of the members of Congress are Republicans right now, in both the House and the Senate.
And we had pretty spirited conversations on our shuttle bus from one place to another. It was interesting to hear their point of view, which plays out on a national scene, I'm sure it was to hear our point of view, which plays out on a national scene.
Well, let's say we've got a caller who wants to join in this conversation. So let's go to the telephone. Caller, are you there?
I sure am, and as always, you're looking mighty spiffy, Congressman. Always looking spiffy.
Today is
Listen.
Friday.
Yes. Listen. Okay. Listen. Is it true that, I hope it's not, that you're going to go on the side with the NAACP to get rid of the national anthem?
No, that was some stuff that I don't know where that came from, and I've had 2 or 3 people who've called me
Yes.
this
You know what?
afternoon,
Because you served in
and
the
I had
service
one
like I
reporter,
did.
and I told this reporter, look, I'm interested in the national anthem, but I've been so busy trying to fight back
Good.
this
Good. But
this
you know what?
this
I'm so happy
this
that I heard you
draconian
say that
tax bill
because
that I
I'm
haven't
glad
had much time to be engaged in that. But I think some news outlet or some blogger or some reporter.
Okay, listen, because you're a veteran like I am, we went and protected our country. And I was saying all these years, my congressman, or not my, but Mr. Davis has always complimented the veterans, the flag, the national anthem. And then all of a sudden I see on TV where I said, you're against it.
Yeah, I don't know where that.
Coming
I
from
mean,
the
I
NAACP. But I'll hang up now, but I want to tell you, you saved my weekend. Thank you for denying it. I didn't think you would. You're a veteran.
I told
You're
the
a great
person I
man.
really don't know what the NAACP in California. Not that I have any aspersions about it, but I just have not been following the event and the activities and the story that much because we've been fighting like the Dickens to try to keep this draconian tax bill from being implemented, and we're going to talk about it in a little bit. But no, I still feel shivers sometimes when I hear, especially if I hear somebody like Ray Charles sing the Star Spangled Banner, or even when I sing it myself. And I get kind of personally offended when somebody performs the national anthem And I do recall saying to a reporter that our country was not formed as a perfect union, and that we've been trying to perfect that union ever since we've been a country, and we still got a long way to go before we can perfect that union. But no, I'm not in favor of getting rid of the national
Okay.
anthem. I'm not in
You know,
favor.
nothing is perfect. Never. Even our song, which we wouldn't protect it.
And they left
But
room.
number two, I want to tell you, on C-SPAN, I was watching you. You were doing your thing up there about the taxes, and Illinois should be proud of you. So I'll hang up now and let you go back to talking. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you very much, and I appreciate your call. All right, and Tiama, you were telling us about what you saw, what you heard, what you learned.
Well, I learned quite a few things. Our first stop was at the U.S. Embassy. And the U.S. Embassy had assembled a team of embassy employees to debrief us. So we started with a debriefing. One of the major issues that they were dealing with specifically was President Trump's upcoming visit and the North Korea crisis. That was one of the major issues. Another issue that the U.S. Embassy explained might
So
be...
they were getting ready for the President of the United States to visit China.
Yes.
All right.
And preparing briefing notes. There's an entire group of people, not only in America, that were preparing for that, but also the Chinese government. Just like we have a research arm, they have a research arm. And we met with those folks too.
But I was watching television a little bit last night, Rachel Maddow, and she was talking about the fact that our diplomatic corps seem to be getting smaller,
Yes, they complained about that.
and that there are people who used to want to join, say, the diplomatic corps and become foreign service officers. Quite frankly, I wanted to join at one time, and when I graduated from college, one of the first places that I went looking for a job once I got out of Arkansas was to take the Foreign Service entrance exam because I was interested in going to work for the government. I had majored in history and government, so we had learned a great deal about foreign activity and foreign affairs. And I often wonder what my life would have been like had I taken that job.
Well, there were some instances where individuals talked about the staffing. They wish that it could have been larger, not only from the U.S. Embassy, but from the China Foreign Service. They find sometimes it's harder to interact with the U.S. Embassy in China because the staffing has been reduced. One of the things, I took a picture, and I was trying to find it, of myself outside the U.S. Embassy, because outside the U.S. Embassy in Beijing is a mural of John F. Kennedy. And I took a picture. I actually had a Republican take a picture of me standing outside of the mural of John F. Kennedy so that I could give to Chris Kennedy. I was really surprised to see that there was a mural there, and it was a fascinating, it's like Fort Knox trying to get into the U.S. Embassy in China.
Well, once it was like trying to get into Fort Knox, getting into China. Was that not the case?
It was pretty easy.
But I'm saying
It was at one
the
time.
Great Wall was
Yeah.
put up.
I have a picture
And
of it.
the Chinese were protected in a way where they were trying to keep out all of this thinking from the West
Yeah.
and this thinking of other. What amazed me was the size of the highways. I remember being on a 16-lane highway, and there's still being
Built.
traffic jams.
And there are quite a few people that are traveling on these highways. We went to a city that I mentioned to you where the population is only 3 or 4 million people, but there's traffic jams there. And you have to understand too that China is very mountainous. And a lot of times they've had to use labor to just plow through mountains in order to get to the other side. China is really the north side of China and the south side of China. And if you're on the north side of China, you eat noodles, and if you're on the south side of China, you eat rice. So it was very interesting, and we went to both sides of China. We went to the country, which was like 3 or 4 million people in the country. We went to the urban cities outside of Beijing, where there are literally hundreds and hundreds of apartment buildings lined up one behind the other on each side of each other, 52 floors high. Millions of people live in these complexes. I mean, it's just one after the other. All you can see are buildings.
So, in spite of the differences that we hear about, and in spite of the progress and lack of progress, do you think that individuals in the United States would be jumping up and down to move to China?
No, I mean, one's decisions are ability to make a decisions about your own life are very limited in China. Most of the people that live in some of these buildings, they don't really have a choice. They came from the farmland. Many of them, they were relocated there because they can't grow apples anymore in the farms that they were at, or they can't grow rice anymore. And the only way that they can be fed, get food in their tummies and a roof over their head, is to go to places like that the government actually subsidizes most of the time. But the one of the political leaders in China indicated that poverty, the elimination of poverty, was one of their number one priorities.
And of course, as technology continues to improve, and as people are able to make land more productive and grow more food, one of the big arguments that we have, I serve on the trade subcommittee in Congress, and we're always talking about trade and the balance of trade and how does trade impact and influence work and jobs and job opportunities. And so there are some people who lament trade deficits and the different kind of products. Did you see a lot of earth movers while you were in China? That is,
Honestly,
big
I
machines.
saw one crane, honestly, and a couple of cranes, because I actually were looking for cranes because that is an indication of movement and development. I mean, there were probably more, but we had a lot of conversations on our way back and forth. We did meet with the American Chamber of Commerce. That was our next stop. We met with the American Chamber of Commerce, and the president of that entity indicated that trade is a major issue. It's one-sided, he indicated.
And it's also a concern.
And it's a concern. And if there was any issue we brought back to our members of Congress, that would be one of them.
But as people interact with with each other. It seems that they learn we're not as afraid of China or as concerned about China as we seem to be about North Korea. And I guess part of the reason is that China has opened up. Of course, hardly does a week go by that I don't go to Chinatown in Chicago. As a matter of fact, I'm going to Chinatown tomorrow. And I'm going to Chinatown tomorrow because one of my colleagues, a fellow named Ted Liu, is having a fundraiser at the Faroma restaurant. And I promised him that if I had the time, it's at 12 o'clock, that I'd find a way to stop by and interact. So, did you consider the trip to be worthwhile?
The trip was very worthwhile on various levels. I wanted to, I was glad that the Chinese representatives talked about poverty elimination because that's a major issue that we are confronted here in the United States. And I wanted to find out if there was anything that they were doing that helped to reduce poverty in China that we could perhaps use in the United States. And basically, all representatives that spoke on that issue said that job creation was the major poverty eliminator.
And I guess I would agree. I mean,
And training.
Well, I made the point earlier today, someplace where I was, that, I was over at Dr. Dick Simpson's class this morning at the University of Illinois. I'm going to let the caller come on in, and then I'm going to come back to the point. Caller, go right ahead.
Good evening, Congressman, and also good evening, Tiama.
Good afternoon.
I used to be in your task force. I remember you very well. Thank you. You did a fine job back then. You guess just a better job now. So my question was, when you were in China, can you tell me what did you experience or happen to see anything to do with acupuncture as one of the, I guess, main sources of delivering health to the people, keeping the people healthy?
Well,
And does longevity the people there, do they live a long, healthy lifestyle? I mean,
in our
existence.
briefing materials, the researchers basically indicated that the lifetime of a woman in China is about 75 years old, and the lifetime of a man is around 73 years old, which is pretty basically similar to the United States. I was at
So
a
even in China, women live longer than men.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay.
And we were having dinner with our host, and we were talking about different foods. And I said, how do you cook egg foo young here? And she said, egg foo what? So there are lots of differences that have been adapted here in the United States that might not be widespread, or I just didn't observe it in China. China healthcare is basically a nationalist, a socialist type of healthcare system. Most people are able to receive healthcare in China and not have to pay for it. There's public education and not have to pay for it. College is free, don't have to pay for it. But not everybody can go to college in China. If I decide that I want to go to college, and I can go. If I decide in China that I want to go to college and I can't, the government doesn't think I should go, I can't go. Those are some of the nuances and differences in our two countries.
All right, thank you very much. So you're saying that there are freedoms that we have here that still does not exist in the same way there.
Yes.
All
And,
right.
there's two other things that were striking to me. Number one of the political leaders in China, acknowledge that the United States is the #1 superpower in the world. And I was surprised to get that kind of open acknowledgement of the United States of America.
All right, well, we are indeed the #1 superpower, and we'll go right to the telephone and get our next caller. Caller, are you there?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
All right, go right ahead.
My question is concerning that our people should have more pride in our communities and be pushed to do more things for our communities rather than worrying about China, because our community is in real bad shape, and it's for her to be wasting time talking about egg foo young on the radio is a waste of airtime. She should be pushing so our people learn how to get away from looking for something for nothing and learn how to get a good education so they'll have better jobs, better communities, and have more respect for each and the representatives who are fighting for those things that are supposed to be very important to us.
Let me ask you, do
I'm
you
just
know?
surprised that we don't have more people attending the meetings that our representatives sitting there next to you holding their community. They're so lazy, and then they want something, but they never go and let the people who represent them know what it is they need for our community. Thank you.
There is some of that, but if you know anybody who create more opportunities for people to do that than I do, I'd be delighted to know who they are, and I'd be delighted to know where they are. I'm not sure it's because our people are lazy. That's why I suggest oftentimes that we have to look at where people have come from in a different way. If you consider slavery, consider all of the things that were done to people, try and create within them this feeling of inferiority and the feeling that they can't do certain kind of things, then we may see things a little differently. And so I'm very proud of some of the things that our people are doing, have done, and will continue to do.
You know, Congressman, I would also add that one of the takeaways for me going to China was to really understand how far we have to go as a people and how much work. So I agree with you. There's a lot of work to be done here in the United States and in our communities. So much work. I mean, the big takeaway was China is not trying to compete with the United States. They're trying to overcome the United States. And that means that we have to be competitive.
And it also means, though, that we have to do all of the things that the gentleman talked about.
Absolutely.
We have to, first of all, help our people to be united and to be joined together in terms of understanding what constitutes and make power real. I sometimes will moan and groan and agonize after going out delivering maybe 5 or 10,000 pieces of paper, asking people to come to a discussion or to come out, participate, and maybe 100 may come or 200. And I'm saying, yeah, and I'm not talking about things that other people did. I'm not talking about flyers that other people put out. I have spent so many Sunday mornings putting out flyers at churches during the last 30 years until it ain't funny. I've gone through communities and I've knocked on every door that community, that there's not a door there that I have not knocked on at some point in time. But I still think that my people are coming, that my people are going to rise up. Let a new earth arise. Let a new people loving freedom be born. Margaret Walker said those things. But I do believe that my people will rise to the occasion and we will see a new social order among African Americans in this country. And I just hope that I live to see it. Caller, are you there?
Yes, yes, Congressman. How you doing?
Okay.
Yes, it's a great day to be on God's green earth, and the most important thing, it's a great day to be in United States of America. You know, we take a lot of things for granted. I mean, we are one of the funniest people on earth. We have privileges that other countries don't have. Just look at this show. Ain't too many countries where you could call in and speak to a politician. It don't work like that. Um, but the question that I want to surmise bring to you, and I say I'm not going to talk about that person that bad, but I think the duck is making other countries look at us just like we are weak or crazy. You know, that man's supposed to be head of the most important country in the world, the United States of America. Um, and I think he does a very poor job of that. And I think other countries probably looking at us very weakly. But again, I believe in our system. You know, I mean, in due time, we going to wake up and see that's not the right person to be in, head up or taking care of us, and we need to do a little bit better. But the main question is, Congressman, who are you passing the baton to? What are you passing the baton to? You got to look what's behind you instead of looking what's ahead of us. Because we got to start preparing for tomorrow, not today or yesterday. So we got a big problem there. But again, how much destruction are we going to let the duck do to us before he just... Another call. I hope it was Donald Duck calling me, but don't worry. There's another call calling me. I'm not going to pick it up. But again, it's what damage is the person going to do before people realize, let's get back on the job. Um,
I think
and you
they're
and you know,
learning when we
huh?
look at the results of the elections that just took place in Virginia
Mm-hmm.
and in New Jersey. And that doesn't mean that the tide has turned or that the trend has been set, but it does give a level of hope.
Yes, it
Maybe
does. Yes, it
is
does.
rejection
Mm-hmm.
that kind of leadership, and that we're looking for something and we will create something different.
But again, that's why I told you, who are we going to pass the baton to? We got to start getting our act together too. So when it's time for us to step up, we'll be able to step up. Just a quick analysis, real quick. I am getting so sick and tired. Every time, hey kids, be quiet. Every time we read the paper, hear the news, they talking about sex. Yeah, I mean, all everywhere. You know, people is in the schools, in the church, is in Hollywood. Uh, Listen, sometimes I think our news hurt us a lot. I mean, you know, this been going on since the beginning of time.
It
And
sure
seems like,
has, and I
yes,
guess
and
the
they
real
just
deal.
want to talk about that. And people are really sick and tired. Now you see it's hitting into politicians now.
All
Every
right.
person want to talk about something 30 years ago. Listen, let me get out there. And Congressman, please have a safe weekend. Make
Thank you so
sure
much.
that
I'm
you're
going to
able to
spend
do what
much
you
of
got to
it
do.
with veterans. So thank you. And I guess the real deal is that sex is still sexy. And so that's why people kind of get all interested in it and all of that. But let's go right to the phone and get our next caller. Caller, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Go right ahead.
How you doing today, Danny K. Davis? I
Good.
want to say I respect you a whole lot. I've worked for you. I'm one of your constituents on the west side at your west side office. I've done work for you in the past, and I would like to do more work for you coming up in the future. And I just had a couple of things I wanted to say. It's like I really think that all this energy talking about China is like almost, it's I wouldn't say unnecessary, but it should be redirected to what we should do among ourselves. Like, I'm concerned with what's happening in China because I'm a citizen of the world. I'm not just a citizen of the west side of Chicago.
Right
I'm
on.
a citizen of the world. And so I'm concerned with what's happening in China, but I'm really concerned with what's happening with myself, and I want to become more involved. Like he said, who is going to get the baton passed to? I want to step up, even though I'm not that young. I want to take that baton, and I want to help pass it on to others to help enlighten our other children so we can help make them have a better place to live and to grow up and maybe raise their children. I just want to say, Honorable Danny K. Davis, I want to pledge my support to you. I want to pledge my support to trying to enlighten everyone because I really think we are focused on the wrong things, and I think I have a lot of things to say. I think I could be an asset to
All
what
right.
you are trying to do, and so I want to leave my name and number and everything with you. But I
All
just want
right.
to say I love the work you're doing, and that sometimes we need to just let China be, and all this news about sex, or I mean with everything about videos and telephones, I mean these cell phones, a lot of stuff is going to come up that haven't came up before. Well, we just got to navigate through all of that and just keep our eyes on the prize. I just want to say thank you.
Thank
Let
you
me leave
so
my
much,
name
and make sure you leave that number with our operator there so that we can be in touch with you, and we look forward to it. Let me just say this about going beyond our country. We don't spend a lot of time on foreign activity. At least I don't. I am on the trade committee, but I'm not on foreign affairs. And the little time that we've spent on China today really is not a lot of time on China. If you check us out every week, we talk about something different. So I don't recall having a conversation about a person going to China ever before on this show. And I've been doing it now for
over 10 years.
several years. But I get the point that you can't just stay locked in. You got to be a part of the world, and the world helps to determine what much of our policy is. Now, the next few minutes, though, let me shift right into yesterday. We passed a terrible tax bill. It's a new bill. And of course, I was surprised today because there were a number of people calling asking me to vote against the bill, and we actually voted yesterday. I'm saying we actually voted on it yesterday in the House. Now, of course, what we have to try and do is convince enough senators so that they can't pass the same kind of bill. The cuts that this tax bill will do to Illinois and to other people around the country, if you start talking about cutting Medicaid big time in Illinois, you talk about cutting Medicare, which is what pays for much of the health care that our senior citizens are able to get. If you talk about taking money out of education so that students can't get the same rates, or students can't get student loans, or they can't get scholarships to go to school. Let me tell you, all of that requires a great deal of work, which takes me back to a caller about 3-4 moments ago. I was at the University of Illinois this morning talking to a group of students, and I commented to the person with me as we left. There were only 2 African Americans in the class. I'm saying it was not just a one class. There were more than 100 students in the room. There were 2 African Americans in the room. And I was saying to myself that I really wish that there were more African American students able to go to college and be a part of the learning that propels them. When we talk about African Americans in technology, and we see everybody with a cell phone, but when you ask the companies how many African Americans work for them, they talk about 2 and 3 and 5 and 6% and all of that. So I don't want the brother to think that we're not in pursuit of this hard work that we need to do. But the first thing that we need to do is get our minds straight. There was a little 12-year-old girl who wrote a poem that I just love. It said, "No chains on my hands, no chains on my feet, can't you see? But the chains on my mind are keeping me from being free." Thank all of you for your calls, for your participation. Thank you, Ms. Romero, for being in the studio. And hopefully, we'll be here next week, and we'll see you then. Sign off, and goodbye.